morning. I'm Carlton Sharp, pastor of Faith Christian Center Church, right here in Beaumont, Texas. And we're here on what's happening in our neighborhood. And today, my special guest is the Honorable Judge Mitch Templeton. Welcome back, Judge.
Pastor, thank you.
Hey, listen, so first of all, let's tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm Mitch Templeton. I'm the judge of the 172nd District Court here in Jefferson County. A district court, which is a state district court, is the highest level of trial court. I was elected to that position in November of last year and took the bench in January of this year, which is 2019.
Now, the last time we talked, it was in campaign season.
Right.
And so, so what was the campaigning like?
The campaign really changed our life in a positive way. It was very rigorous, physically demanding, but it required, because my jurisdiction is a county-wide jurisdiction, I had to really learn the entire county. I've lived in Beaumont. We've lived in Beaumont for 28 years. I thought I knew the county pretty well, but I had to meet people in Nederland, Port Neches, Port Arthur, Hampshire Fannett, China. I had to meet everybody throughout the county to hope to earn their vote. But that process, as physically demanding as it was, gave me an opportunity to share my faith, to let people know who I was and who my wife and I are as a couple. And so in that way, and the fact that I did learn the county and learn the people of the county better, it was a very positive event.
Well, and listen, we had a chance to meet you too.
That's right.
You were going around the county, different neighborhoods, different communities, just talking to people.
That's right. And if you're a judge for all the people. And so it's very important to meet everybody that you possibly can. Speak to every people group, every church group, every faith group. Everybody is important. Everybody's created in the image of God. Everybody is equal under our laws. And so that's how you have to look at a campaign.
And it's not Democrat or Republican. When you're the judge for everybody.
That's right. Exactly. Our system forces you to be involved in partisan politics, the way we choose judges in Texas. So you're not going to get around that, and that's fine. But that's right. In fact, it's interesting, Pastor, when the first thing that we were told when I went to new judges school, literally the speaker got up, and there were hundreds of new judges. It was the largest new judges school ever in the state of Texas. And he said, my number one job is to bring you off the campaign trail.
Wow. Wow.
Exactly. And that's exactly how I reacted. I was like, oh, wow. That's right.
And so I read one of the suggestions that you made, because once they install each group of people who got elected, normally they do the Democrats on one day and the Republicans on a different day. And one of the suggestions that you made was, hey, let's make sure we do this together because we're representing all the people.
That was a suggestion I made. And we'll see how it's reacted to. This is pretty much a Democrat county, and it has been for over a century. So I'm the new guy, and I hope, but that was from my heart.
Yeah.
And I hope that we will have more unity, because I don't think we ought to have a separate invocation and swearing in. I think that we ought to do it all together at one event. That's just my thought.
I like that thought.
Right.
Because, hey, you're all representing the people.
That's it.
Whether you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, it doesn't matter. You're representing all the people of Jefferson County.
Right. If I had my way, and I wrote a paper on this in law school, and really this is still being studied, but it's been studied for decades, and so I'm not going to hold my breath. But I think the judge's race, probably the sheriff's race, even some of the clerk races, county clerk, district clerk, those are not policy-creating offices. We don't write legislation. Now we do pass administrative policies that are important,
right.
But I think they ought to be nonpartisan races. And for judges, probably a down ballot, nonpartisan vote. Because I do think people should vote for their office holders. I haven't bought into the appointment theory, appointing judges, which is done in a lot of states.
Right.
And of course, that's what's done for federal judges at every level. There's an appointment process and an affirmation process by Congress. I'm not advocating that, but I would like to see it be less partisan.
Yeah, I think that would be better for all of us if it was that way.
I think you're right.
Now, so tell me, how has it been since you've been on the bench?
It's been good. Yeah, that's how's it going to be? How is it going to be when you're the new guy? And the short answer, it's gone very well, and people have been very kind, very accommodating, and very helpful to the new judge, and so it's gone well. It's gone well.
Now, so we can describe what your court does. I mean, there is the criminal side, and then there is the civil side.
Right.
So tell us what 172nd District Court is.
The 172nd District Court is what's called a court of general jurisdiction. It can hear any kind of case, but for the last 25 or so, maybe 30 years, it has been designated by the county as a civil-only court.
Ah.
I have changed that.
Okay.
I ran on that, you may recall, and it is happening. I have, in fact, I tried a aggravated assault case for Judge Stevens just this week.
Okay.
And I've tried several cases that were referred directly from the criminal courts. But one of the things that has happened, and I hope we can talk about this a little bit more, but Judge Gist was very ill and passed away.
Right.
Due to his infirmity, his illness, which began really at the beginning of the year, as soon as I took office, I began helping him with his docket, and actually Judge Walston, the judge of the 58th District Court, and I really have handled most of his docket up until his passing last week. So I have been doing criminal cases just like I ran on, and actually done hundreds of them in the Drug Impact Court.
Now, the only limitation was because the county decided that the 172nd would be a civil court.
Right, and they wouldn't be able to limit the court because it's a statutorily created court. I am more a state employee versus a county employee.
Gotcha.
So the state of Texas directs really what my court does by statute.
Gotcha.
But just as a procedural matter and kind of an administrative matter, just to handle the high volume of asbestos cases that were coming in 25, 30 years ago, it became designated civil only. But that wasn't a statute, that wasn't some hard and fast rule that couldn't be changed. And in fact, it has changed with my election.
Well, and now you're starting to see some of the cases move in the Jefferson County area because you guys are saying, hey, listen, let's pass some of this stuff around.
That's it. Our district criminal courts work very hard. The lawyers, the prosecutors, they try so many cases, Pastor, and the judges work so hard and they do a great job. But unfortunately, we have a large volume of criminal cases per capita in our county, and we have people sitting in jail. It's
waiting.
Not fair to them.
Right.
It's expensive for the county, and to the extent we can, we need to move those cases. Now, with regard to the Drug Impact Court, that court was created by a grant which played out, my understanding, years ago, and so it's a direct county expense.
Wow.
So to the extent that my court and the other judges' courts can absorb the Drug Impact Court into our dockets, we will save, that will be a direct savings to the people of Jefferson County and to the county.
Now, one of the things I also noticed, even on your website, the 172nd website, you're actually listing all of the cases that have come through your court over the months.
Right. Are you talking, now, there's several sites you could be referring to. The county court is going to list that. The Southeast Texas Record has been covering some of our actions. And then what I've done also, which is new, is I actually decided, I made the decision to have a 172nd Facebook page.
Whoa, I didn't see that one.
Well, it's there. And what I do is, and the world of social media is new. And so public officials and courts in particular are trying to find their way.
Yeah.
Some people have said, I'm not going to be involved in it. I'm not doing that at all. I don't think, personally, that's the way to go. The public doesn't understand what we do.
Right.
Okay? And you figure that out when you're campaigning. Because they'll say things like, well, now what do you do? What does the 172nd do? Or what kind of cases do you handle? Or They'll want to tell you about a probate situation that's, in the county court, or they don't understand
Right.
the difference in courts. And so I feel like to be more transparent and for people to really understand what we're doing, I'm going to be involved in social media. Now, I'm going to be reserved. I'm not going to be talking about individual cases
Right.
per se and naming people and naming names. Even though it's a public court and those are public events, I'm going to be judicious with the way I communicate through my 172nd website.
So you're not going to go live on Facebook?
Oh no, no, that would not be. That's the extreme.
That's the extreme. Okay.
And I would not do that.
Yeah, yeah.
But I do, and it's fun to talk about and laugh about. But because you don't know where to draw the line because they've never been drawn. We've never been in these uncharted waters.
Yeah. And even some of the laws don't deal with
They don't.
the social media thing that's going on now.
It's just recent that the jury charges and the jury instructions have been updated. And to tell you they're already out of date, MySpace is mentioned in the charges. Well,
Wow.
Not to knock MySpace, but it's gone.
It's gone.
And so it's still in the pattern jury instructions when you're instructing people not to communicate about the case that they're sitting on over social media.
Right.
So it's not just judges, it's the court system in general that's figuring this out as we go. I think it's such an important part of society now and a powerful tool for good.
Right.
We all know
right,
that it can
right,
be used
right,
for evil.
Right.
But I choose to be involved in it because I think that the power and the tool for good, which is public information, public understanding, and transparency of government in general, it's so powerful in that regard. I choose to be involved in it.
Now, one of the things that we talked about when you were campaigning was the fact that you were going to change how the lawyers were able to come behind the scene, to deal with the judge. So
Right.
talk to us about that.
Well, it's much more limited now. And the standard for ethics with regard to being fair and impartial as a judge is not, is there an impropriety, but is there an appearance
That's
of
right.
impropriety?
Yeah.
And so the appearance is the standard. And so it's almost like as a man thinketh in his heart.
So is he?
You can say, well, I didn't cheat on my wife, but what were you thinking in your heart?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I wasn't talking to the lawyer about their case. Well, what does it look like you were doing?
Yeah.
Right?
To the opposing attorney.
Right. And so we've locked the doors in terms of the hallways, and this is good for security also. But Judge Walston, who is our now our executive judge, the judge of the 58th, has led the way on this, and it's coincided with me coming in, and so it's made it easier for me to keep that campaign promise because the other judges are on board and realizing we need to make this change. But there are, much like you have here, you have a Ring doorbell here.
Yeah.
We have Ring doorbells
Yeah.
on all of our court offices, so we control access. And we have a standing rule now. You can come by and talk to me as long as you don't have anything pending on my docket.
And so how has that change been received?
It's been received well.
Okay.
It has been. I haven't had any problem. Candidly, people probably wouldn't complain because honestly, everybody knows what the standard is, and there's no valid reason to be upset about, I think, what we've set in place.
So what is the most surprising thing that you found since you've been sitting on the bench?
The most surprising thing was the sheer number of cases I have pending. That would probably be number one. I found out I had 800 pending cases. Yeah, I didn't know that. I knew
Hold up, you had 800 cases pending
when I showed up.
When you showed up.
That's right.
So did you say, well, maybe I shouldn't have took this job?
Have not done that. You know how you eat an elephant.
One bite at a time.
That's it. and so that's it. And we've cleared 300 cases
Wow.
already as of June. I don't even have the latest numbers.
So in
for
6
you.
months?
Yes, because a number of cases that were on the docket were resolved, but the parties had not filed the proper paperwork.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And had not communicated with the court. So we're going through and cleaning that up so I have an actual accurate number of pending cases. Now let me say this. 2 of the cases of those 800 were asbestos cases I did not know were still on the court's docket, have been there for over 20 years.
Whoa.
And have over, well, almost 300 plaintiffs in them.
Wow.
So really, if you look at it and you count those people as individual cases, I had over 1,000 cases pending. So I still have 700 or 800 cases that I've got to deal with.
Wow.
We're doing fine. We'll get on top of it. We're trying cases at a quick clip, and but that was the most surprising thing, just the sheer volume that awaited me to work on. The other surprising thing was, of course, I had no way of knowing, no one did, that Judge Gist would become critically ill and that I would need to help take over that drug impact docket. That was probably the biggest, really the biggest administrative surprise and thing that we had to adapt to. But it's gone well.
Recently, I talked to Judge West, and she was talking about how you guys were helping out in different courts to speed up the process to help those who are incarcerated, get their fair trial.
That's right. You got to think about it like this. We have a judge who is sick, right? So he or she cannot hear their cases. Well, some people are out on bond. But even those people, their fate is unknown, and the sword of Damocles, so to speak, is hanging over their head.
Right.
It's not fair to them to have to wait. And then other people are incarcerated, and their life is on hold. And that's not fair to say, well, the judge is sick, you're going to have to stay in jail.
Right.
Well, no. And Judge West and Judge Stevens are to be commended. They exercised leadership. They got me and Judge Walston involved. They helped coach me as a new judge on what to expect, and those cases have moved. There may have been some delay, but people found out what their fate was, and I know it has moved people out of jail because it's very, very common for me in those cases to approve a plea deal and approve punishment that was basically time served.
Right.
And since I got to the case, they could go ahead and leave jail because they had met the burden of what they were going to be punished with. So, yes, Judge West and Judge Stevens have exhibited excellent leadership in that regard, and I'm thankful for that.
And that is saving the county money because you don't have to bring in a judge from outside of our area.
The $110 a day, which is what it costs to keep an inmate in, is a savings, and yes, it's over $600 a day to bring a visiting judge in. And again, that's why if we're able to absorb the court, and we met just this week, in fact, and we are moving forward with that plan to fold those dockets into, or we're not actually folding them into our dockets. We are going to go over to that court and manage that existing docket. But yes, we will not have to bring in visiting judges or hire a new judge at a six-figure salary. So that's a direct savings to the county.
And so that means that you have to really do a good job at scheduling your court case, your caseload versus the other courts.
And that's what we met about this week. I will be dedicating, and I think Judge Walston will also be dedicating at least 1 week a month, beginning immediately, and continuing until either it's working or not, or we need to do more, or we don't. However, we'll see how it works out. But we're going to be dedicating 1 week a month, and criminal cases and criminal defendants will be given priority on my docket over civil cases because it involves civil liberties and incarcerated people.
Yeah.
We need to move people through the system. It's not fair to them, and it's expensive to the taxpayer.
So what is the biggest difference that you found between being a judge and a lawyer?
Great question. Frankly, it's less stressful. I tell people, I manage stressful situations now. I don't represent stressful situations. I don't represent people in distress and that aren't making bad decisions. I manage that now. Well, I'm not saying there's not some stress and even some anguish because you want to do what's right. And as a judge, you have to make difficult decisions. involving civil liability, involving criminal liability, punishment. I don't take those decisions lightly. And so there is pressure, but it's not as much pressure as representing people facing those challenges. So the biggest difference is I think there's less stress, less pressure. I go to one office now. That's much less stressful. I'm better. I'm been able to take care of myself better. I've lost 27 pounds on purpose.
On purpose.
Yeah.
On purpose. Not because of the caseload.
Yeah, not because of stress, but in a positive way.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I go to one office. I'm not having to travel all over the state to different courts like I did as a private practitioner. So that's a big difference and a positive difference.
Now, I know as a pastor in preparing, I like to look at myself as a lawyer preparing myself to plead my case before the congregants. Now, as a judge, how do you prepare for a case and then if you have to make a judgment that goes against somebody, how do you prepare for that?
Great question. First of all, I will never know the case as well as the lawyers and the parties. It's impossible. They live it, right? They lived the facts.
Right.
They lived the litigation. And so it's impossible for me to know the case like they know it. But good lawyers make the proper filings and the proper oral arguments that bring me up to speed. I read every single motion.
I was just going to ask you that.
I read every single motion beforehand, and I ask questions because I do care about the facts, and I obviously have to correctly apply the law. But to answer your question, I prepare by reading a lot, which is not any different than you do in law school or in private practice.
Wow. Now, there's justice reform has become a hot topic not only in our state but nationally. What is your perception of where we are in Texas and in Washington when it comes down to justice reform?
Okay. In Washington, President Trump signed the First Step Act, which is a reformation of federal sentencing and sentencing guidelines. That's a little, I was a practitioner in that arena, but that has been a very favorable development for criminal defendants and criminal defense attorneys. That's a beginning of reform that is bipartisan, and the president has continued to advocate for that. And I mean, to the surprise probably of a lot of people, he has signed off on significant reform that helps, people that are facing a federal criminal liability, which is a very serious liability. On a state level, 3 different bills designed to reform the bail process and the sentencing process have made it just to the brink of passage, but did not make it. That's 2 sessions in a row where bills have come very close to passing. I am advocating for that. Part of becoming involved in the political process and running has introduced me to our state representatives and our state representation, so I feel like I have more influence in that regard. And now that I'm elected, I even have more influence with them. But I know our state representative, Dade Phelan, immediately after the session, took on the mantle of criminal justice reform by announcing that he was doing that.
Okay.
And he has begun to interview people, and it will be really interesting to see. He's really dynamic and has gotten a lot of things done for our area in terms of flood control, and he's also gotten a lot done in the area of mental health reformation. So I am optimistic. And we can do things on a local level, and we're working on that, which we can talk about, but it really has to really be effective and consistent. It needs to happen in Austin.
Right.
At the seat of state government. But I'm optimistic it will.
Talk to the audience today about the responsibility of taking their civil responsibilities for jury duty seriously enough to go and participate in this process.
It's critical. And I think it's better than ever based on the feedback I'm getting because, excuse me, now you sign in through a portal.
Right.
You receive your notice, you go in through the internet, you submit your demographic information.
And select your days. You can select when you
That's
serve.
right. Yes, and it comes back with your assignment directly to the court. So you don't go to
the
that big impounding room and wait and waste even more time.
Right.
You go directly to the court you're serving in, and so people, I hope, find it easier than it was in the past, and it's so important. And one of the things that I've really done is, if it's very typical for my docket to settle, if I set 3 civil cases, I don't just dismiss them. I bring them, first of all, if they settle early enough in the week, or even if they settle late on a Friday, I'll call Judge Stevens or Judge West and say, look, I've got a jury coming in Monday, and typically they'll have a 10 or 12 case docket. Do you want me to keep my jury? Because I'll help you clear your docket.
Right.
And they will say, yes, keep your jury. I bring the jury in. I have them there at 9 a.m. I'm punctual. And at 9 a.m., I bring them in and say, let me tell you what's happened already. Because what I want people to understand is their jury service doesn't begin when they get down to the courthouse. When they hit submit to the district clerk, to Jamie Smith, when it goes to his office and it generates a list, that immediately comes to me and then gets sent to the litigants.
Wow.
And they look at it. And guess what? It's maybe they know people, maybe they're looking at the demographics of the jury and trying to guess what they'll do or what they won't do. And so their service has already begun, and they'll settle that act right there. That act of service settles cases.
Wow.
And I tell them about that. I'm going to educate them when they come into my court. And then I tell them, let me tell you what else we're going to do today. Judge Stevens has asked me to hold you, and he's going to help settle cases in his court by the fact that you're here.
Uh-huh.
And it works. And either people plea in criminal cases because they know they're going to get sent across the hall to me, even though they're not going to get reached in his court because he has a trial. Or I try a case for him. Right. Either way, we're moving the docket.
And that's that circular motion that keeps on going. I mean,
I tell people, I told the jury, in fact, this past week, he's going to clear his docket from the top, and I'm going to help him clear it from the bottom.
Yeah, we're going to meet in the middle.
That's it. And we're going to move these we're going to move these cases. If the courts will cooperate, which we are, we'll move more cases.
Now you have 3 more years on this since you've been elected.
Right.
So where do you see the 172nd going in these next 3 years?
I see it becoming more and more relevant to the people of Jefferson County, and by that I mean we are going to be, and this is happening. I'm already describing it to you. We're going to be more involved in all kinds of litigation, not just civil cases. We're going to be helping move criminal cases. We're going to be part of the conversation when it comes to deferring mental health defendants. I call them mental health defendants, people that really should be deferred from the criminal justice system. A lot of times people are struggling with a mental health problem. They're suffering from the effects of it. They're going to get picked up on misdemeanor trespassing cases. Yeah. They're picked up for whatever reason. Maybe there's an assault, a fight. A lot of times it's a misdemeanor situation. I anticipate, had a meeting, in fact, with Sheriff Stevens last week about this very thing. The 172nd, to the extent that we're invited, I mean, I can't make people.
Can't force it.
I can't force the issue, but I'm availing the court to help not only in criminal courts, but in the mental health arena also, because everybody wants the same thing. If there's no culpability because of a mental illness situation, if people need help, we need to try to get them the help. And so I see, to answer your question directly, I see the 172nd involved in the criminal litigation and the mental health efforts of our county, and by doing that, will be more relevant and more helpful to the people of Jefferson County.
Now, Judge, on the criminal side, we see alarming statistics that the defendants are getting younger and younger and younger and younger. What do you say about that?
It's tragic. It's a matter of the heart and the home. And you and I both know that, people have a hole in their heart and they're going to fill it with something.
Yep.
And what they choose to fill it with dictates the direction they take. They can fill it with the love and saving grace of Jesus Christ,
right,
and go the right way, which I know doesn't ensure that they won't have problems, or that because of their situation won't maybe they'll still have a criminal situation. But when it's filled with hate, when it's filled with drugs, it leads down the path of destruction, and it's just what we see.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be candid and tell you, gratefully, so far I have not seen. I've seen those statistics in my court. It hasn't really been young people, but that's what I think is the cause of it and the problem. I bet you see it the same way. I hope you do.
Yeah. So how do you manage your faith and being a judge? I mean, it has to tug at you.
It does, but it's not a problem. It is not a problem because, I'm a judge for all the people. Ultimately, I had this discussion the other day with someone. Everybody is created in the image of God, and I understand that, and I believe that in my heart. And that's where I start with you, and that's where I start with everybody that comes into my court. They are created just like me in the image of God. And when you understand that basic truth and you treat people the way you want to be treated, which is what Christ taught us to do when it comes to dealing with people, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, it hasn't been a struggle for me. And it's given me really opportunity to share my faith in appropriate situations.
Right.
I mean, if someone is in my chambers and they ask me a question about my faith, I'm going to answer it.
Yeah, exactly.
And the law is very clear, especially in chambers, in my private office. If I'm invited to talk about things like that, I'm going to take the opportunity, and I've had that opportunity.
Right.
And there's no violation of First Amendment principles when it's handled appropriately.
Now, I'm excited also, Judge, that on tomorrow I get to talk to your wife, and she's going to come on the show and talk about her book and talk about From Fear to Faith. Man, I'm excited about that.
Well, I'm glad you should be, because she's a great woman, and the book is fantastic. There's a joy. It's just a joy to be married to her. She's my best friend and a great helpmate, and I think you'll enjoy talking to her about her book.
Well, I'm going to ask if she feel the same way. Now, how long have you guys been married?
33 years.
30? Yeah, so we'll do that tomorrow, and we'll talk to her, and I'll ask her how she feels about you being on the bench, because I'm sure that it's an impact on the family too.
It is. You're and that began in the campaign because you're put under a microscope, and I think we talked about this during the campaign. The blessing is she's my high school sweetheart, and we really became a couple when we were 15 years old, and now we're both 55.
That's 40 years.
I know. and so we grew up together, and we actually grew closer over the years, which of course led to our marriage and our family. So she is my biggest cheerleader and my toughest critic, and that's very helpful.
Yes.
It's very helpful. She refines me and has refined me in many, many ways, and that will continue. But it's, she's a public figure also now. In being a judge, you don't lose your First Amendment rights, and she doesn't lose hers at all, but mine are restricted. And, she has to be mindful of that.
Yeah.
And also, security is an issue. I have to make tough decisions about criminal liability, and I have to sit in judgment of really some very bad people. And so that places our family at risk, and that's part of it. But that's, we discussed that going into it, and I'll let her answer questions about that. I mean, you can ask her about those things and see how she feels about it.
So mentioning that, I mean, how does being a judge affect your public life? I mean,
it's dramatically different.
Going to the restaurant. I mean, just out and about.
People know me now. And I honestly, I like to think that I haven't changed the way I act at all, because I tried to act with integrity and apply the principles that I live by as a judge, even as I did that as a private practitioner. So it hasn't changed in that regard, but you're much more public. And part of the judicial training is the realization, the reality, the security reality of situational awareness, being concerned about being a target as a judge.
Right, right.
So that has changed, but I've always been vigilant in that arena anyway. So it has changed. It has changed, but again, I can't say that it's negative. I think it's overall positive.
Well, listen, Judge, I want to thank you for coming today to talk about all of these things and of the 172nd and where the 172nd is going over the next 3 years. And I'm sure that the public will applaud the fact that you're starting to move all the cases, all the judges combined together as a team.
Right.
And that's what's important. I mean, you guys are functioning as a team, not this is your civil, I'm criminal, or drug impact. But it's a team effort.
The concept of a fiefdom, and this is my territory and that's your territory. Now, judges have to remain independent.
Yeah.
And I don't want people to be confused. I have to exercise independent discretion, and the other judges also. We can't be trading decisions or saying we're going to rule this way at all times. That's not independence. But when it comes to procedure and when it comes to serving the public, we can act in unity, and we are.
Well, great. Well, again, I want to thank the judge for coming. I want to thank you for joining us on What's Happening in Our Neighborhood, and we will see you next time on our broadcast.